Hey everybody, it's Virginia McClain here again, back with chapter 2 of Victoria Marmot and the Meddling Goddess. Hope everybody's doing well, and thanks so much for everybody who watched chapter 1 already. I'll make sure there's a link to chapter 1 down in the initial, in this video. And I'll also post links to the books again for anybody who wants to be reading along or reading ahead or skipping me reading aloud altogether and just reading the books. Yeah, I'm going to start in on chapter 2. And you could go back and watch chapter 1 if you've forgotten what happened. But basically, Vic had just run away from the woods where she'd met Gwen. And is now arriving home. So that's where we're starting off with chapter 2. Crawling into my own bed in the large, empty house my parents had willed to me didn't make me feel any better. Part of me wished I hadn't allowed Gwen to scare me away from my campsite. Watching the meteor shower from the side of the mountain would have been spectacular, and probably worth the risk of getting stabbed to death by a delusional woman delivering quests. But I had been too agitated to think it through at the time. Returning to my newly acquired home had seemed the more reasonable option, even if it was depressingly devoid of other people. Pulling up to the darkened doorstep of my blue clapboard-covered home, in its quaint, gently wooded Flagstaff neighborhood, hadn't made me feel any more secure than I had felt alone in the woods. And walking into the house was just one more reminder that I was alone in the world. Well, I suppose I had my great uncle Algernon, but that wasn't much comfort when he wasn't actually in town. Getting ready for bed, my mind played the conversation I'd had with a total stranger in the woods on an endless loop. When my brain finally let me sleep, I was more agitated than I had been since my parents had failed to come home from their round-the-world journey. I woke up so angry it was a physical sensation. As I stared down my reflection while brushing my teeth, I was practically vibrating with rage. Who the fuck was this Gwen person anyway? And I don't mean that in the figurative, who does she think she is type way, although hey, that too while we're at it. But who was she? She was the kind of nutjob who went around claiming to be a narrator and delivering quests, that's who she was. I should just ignore her and her ridiculous claims about my parents, but she disappeared like she was straight out of Hogwarts. That could be some kind of special effect. It's not like I searched every inch of the woods for her right after she amscrayed from my line of sight. Or like I could even have searched the woods well enough to eliminate the possibility that she'd just used smoke, mirrors, and a hologram to fake her disappearance, even if I had tried. She could totally be pulling one over on me. It's not as though vanishing made the rest of what she said true. It was just that what she'd said about my parents... Damn it! I'd spent so much time trying to accept my parents' death every day since I got the call 6 months ago. It had been the main thing I'd been doing with myself. Gwen hadn't been wrong when she'd accused me of running into the wilderness to hide from people and process things. It was what I was doing every weekend when on my backpacking trips, with every trail run I took into the mountains. But I had researched my parents' death as fully as any 17-year-old could without retracing their every step. I had tracked down all of the records from their GPS, all of their emergency logs, everything that their beacon had broadcast the day their boat was lost, all of it. It had taken me months to even accept that they were dead. That it wasn't all some ridiculous mistake. The possibility that they hadn't died that day? But was that even what the naked narrator lady was implying? That my parents were still alive? Or was she just suggesting that they hadn't died drowning in the Indian Ocean? I shook myself from where I'd gotten lost in the mirror and swore loudly when I checked the time on my phone. Great. On top of everything else, I was going to be late for my first day at my new school. I must have still been furious when I rushed into my first period physics class that morning. That's the only explanation I can come up with for why I decided to sass the teacher when she asked me why I was late. Well, that or the fact that the bell had rung while I was walking through the door. "Why are you tardy, Miss Marmot?" What a quaint name. The teacher was a middle-aged woman with lank black hair and what looked like a permanent sneer. I rushed past multiple rows of blacktop desks, each with pairs of stools supporting a variety of fellow teenagers, barely noticing any of the people around me or the vaguely generic science paraphernalia around the room, and I took a seat at the back. I replied while rummaging through my backpack for my notebook. Sorry, it's my first day. I got lost on my way here. No, that wasn't the sassy part. And you believe that excuses your tardiness? I stared at her for a moment before replying. Well, it's kind of a one-time excuse, so yeah. There we go, sastastic. Well, class, Miss Marmot believes the rules don't apply to her. How does that make the rest of you feel? We should punish her, shouted an enthusiastic blonde kid from the first row. Great. Next up, I expected someone to accuse me of turning them into a newt. But before anyone could get my funeral pyre ready, the voice next to me spoke up. She smells amazing. I turned, incredulous at the inanity of that statement, and found possibly the most handsome boy I had ever seen staring at me with a disturbing look in his eye. What was that, Edic? The teacher asked. Nothing, Miss Rebuke. I said no hazing. The school rules dictate we shouldn't... I snickered and he stopped speaking. I hadn't meant to let the noise escape me, but rebuke? Do you find something funny, Miss Marmot? Now the woman was suddenly standing right in front of my desk, and I was too mesmerized by how quickly she'd moved to come up with any witty retort. No, Miss Rebuke. I barely managed not to chuckle saying her name. I felt bad, though. Most people had no choice in their last names. If you are so intent on entertaining this class, Miss Marmot, perhaps you can entertain us with today's lesson. The topic is dark matter. Please, why don't you enlighten us with your extensive knowledge on the subject? Well, that was an odd punishment. I was a little surprised that dark matter was today's lesson, even though this was an AP Physics class. It wasn't exactly an intro topic, but whatever, far be it from me to discourage an interesting lesson plan. I shrugged. Okay, do you want me at the front of the class? The chalkboard would be handy. Miss Rebuke said nothing, only glared at me. I decided to stay in my seat. So, dark matter is a popular theoretical explanation for all the excess mass in the universe, I began. Did I mention that binge-watching Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos remake was another way in which I dealt with my parents' death? Honestly, binge-watching anything on Netflix should be considered an official stage of grief. Somewhere after denial and anger, but before acceptance. On its largest scale, the universe behaves in a way that suggests that there is way more mass in it than we can currently detect. The theory is that most of the universe's mass, therefore, is matter that we can't see, sense, or detect with current instruments. Something like 99% of the universe is made up of this non-detectable matter. In fact, that's enough, Miss Marmot. You may visit the principal's office at any time now. You certainly aren't needed here, as you've made it clear that you're already an expert in today's subject. Wait, are you kicking me out of... Go! Miss Rebuke sounded like she was ready to spit flames, so I didn't argue. I really hadn't meant to give her any grief to start with, but being marked tardy as I walked in while the bell was ringing on my very first day at a new school, in a new town, when I had already woken up angry, I wasn't at my best. I had started to pack up my stuff when the stupidly handsome boy next to me spoke up again. I'll take her, he said, in the tone of someone who had been asked to help the less fortunate. She won't know how to get there. Excellent, Edic. Please come right back. I had a school map in my pocket, and the look in Edic's eyes still freaked me out a bit, so I headed for the door without looking to see if he was behind me. That is chapter 3. It's a little short, but I'm hoping that you'll be excited for tomorrow's reading on chapter 3. Did I say that was chapter 2? Next up is chapter 3. I'm not sure what I actually said, but that's what I meant. Anyway, I hope you are all doing reasonably well, all things considered, and I hope that this story continues to entertain you. This chapter isn't necessarily quite as amusing as the last one, but things continue to be funny, I hope, as we go. All right, so that's all from me, and if I look at this and it turns out that was way shorter than I thought, I will go ahead and record chapter 3 today and post it right after, so you have a little more to entertain yourselves. And yeah, I hope your quarantine or self-isolation is going well, and I'll see you guys at the next reading.